Ask and you shall receive. On yesterday's show, I wondered why Brett Baty had not been called up by the New York Mets. Now we got the answer. He will be with the team on Wednesday. Going to talk about what Baty can bring to the Mets on the show today, and also talk about another disappointing loss and another injury as Taijuan Walker exited his start early with back spasms.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. And also, speaking of Just Baseball, we have our guy, Arm Layton, one of our co-founders, who is one of the best prospect analysts out there. And when he heard the news about Baty, here's what he said. This was a tweet. He says, quote, "The Mets are calling up perhaps the hottest hitter on the planet right now. Over the last 25 games for Brett Baty, hitting 407, 513 on base, 727 slugging, 8 home runs, 6 doubles, 15 walks, and 19 strikeouts." And here's the big one, 16 multi-hit games across his last 25 games played. This is a prospect that Arm has liked for a really long time, dating back to our top 100. Prior to this season, he had Baty at number 25. You look at the grades he gave him: raw power, 55-60 grade, hit tool, 45-55, game power, 45-55, run 30-30, fielding 45-50. His future value, a 60 grade player on an 80 grade scale. That's really solid. And, he talks about the plate discipline, the fact that he can be a fastball masher, he can get into good counts and be aggressive on heaters. He talks about how the defense is still a question mark for Brett Baty, but ultimately the bat is going to play. And, that's what I've been talking about on the show over the last couple of days here. You're looking at Brett Baty, you're talking about his progression as a prospect. Here's a guy that was selected by the Mets back in 2019 in the first round, their 12th overall pick. Here he's going to come up to the show in his third professional season, had his first year in 2019, rookie ball and some limited playing time. Then his first full season ends up being 2021, starts the year in high A, put up great numbers last year, hit 309, 397 on base, 514 slugging, had 22 extra base hits in 51 games played, gets promoted up to Double A, spent 40 games there last year, and posted a 787 OPS. Not outstanding, but he held his own in a league that at the time he was a little bit young for. And this season, he really did rise to be the best hitter in that same league. I've talked about it on the last couple of shows, not only the one yesterday, but our last Friday Farm Report talking about Brett Baty and some of the numbers. But to reiterate, 312 hitter in Double A this year, 406 on base, 544 slugging, 19 home runs, 22 doubles, 59 RBIs. His 159 WRC plus was the best mark in the league. Again, WRC plus is a metric that measures hitters based on a league average of 100. So that is an all-encompassing metric that tells you that Baty was 59% better than your league average hitter and was the best hitter in that Eastern AA league. So you're calling up a guy who has great pitch recognition. He's going to be able to identify breaking balls. He'll be able to draw his walks. You'll see, obviously, how he adjusts to being on the big stage. There's a huge mental component to playing in the big leagues that we just can't quantify based on any of the data we have on Baty to know how he's going to translate. But I love this decision by the Mets. I like that they aren't waiting for the Philly series. They're getting him in the lineup against Jake Odorizzi on Wednesday night. So you're going to have a Max Scherzer start with Brett Baty making his MLB debut. That is an absolutely thrilling thing for Mets fans to tune into the game to watch. And I really do think that when you're looking at the stretch run of this season, the Mets needed another jolt considering all the injuries they just suffered. They had the wave of Naquin coming in, Vogelback coming in first, then, Darren Ruff. And so that kind of core that came in at the deadline to lift up the incumbents has been huge. And the Mets went on a run prior to these two games where they just lost against the Braves, where they won 17 out of 20. Now you lose Louis Guillorme, who is in the lineup almost every day. Eduardo Escobar is banged up right now. He's not hitting the IL, but it's clear that he's a little bit limited at the moment. Brett Baty gives you this ultimate jolt of excitement. And I really think that when it comes to the at-bats the Mets are going to get, I would really bet on Brett Baty to not only give you better at-bats than Eduardo Escobar against right-handed pitching. That's a given. That's not a high bar to climb. But what I could see from a Brett Baty is even better at-bats than we've been seeing from Louis Guillorme. Guillorme has been fantastic against righties this year, working counts and everything else. But the difference is, while Guillorme can get on base at a good clip, he can get his singles, he can draw his walks, Brett Baty has power to tap into that Guillorme just doesn't. So that's going to give them at some upside offensively that we haven't seen. If you look at a lineup and you're projecting out a Brett Baty in it, let's just say it's the same, starting five, right? If it's Nemo, Marte, Lindor, Alonso, Vogelback, maybe you got McNeil, then a Brett Baty potentially. You still have either Canna or Naquin, then you have the catcher spot. That is a ridiculously deep lineup, and Baty just lengthens it even more. So I love the move to finally call up a prospect to try to help the stretch run of this season. I think he has a chance to really grab a job and hold on to it. If Brett Baty hits the way he has over the last 25 games like we're talking about, or even just you look at the entire scope of his season, if he can be a guy that hits over 300 at the big league level, which I do think is his future, but if he can realize that future right now, he can grab a starting job on this team that could continue into the playoffs if he is what he's billed to be as, the top prospect in the Mets system outside of Francisco Alvarez. But he's also beyond that, probably the best prospect that's going to debut for this Mets team in regards to how he is viewed among, top 100 circles since Ahmed Rosario. And Rosario kind of had an interesting prospect status where there was a time where he was highly valued, but there was always a big range of outcomes there. This is really, in my opinion, the most surefire prospect since David Wright. Now, does he have the same ceiling as a David Wright? That's putting way too much pressure on the kid early to say, hey, you're the next David Wright at third base. Defensively, there's some questions. Not sure if he'll have the power of a David Wright, but could he be a guy that's going to hit over 300 in the big leagues for a considerable amount of time? He absolutely can be, or if nothing else, at least a guy that gets on base at a really high clip. So I love this move. I'm excited to see what he looks like. And he's going to be tasked now with being the face of saving the Mets season, because that is how much we overreact to a couple of losses. So what I'm going to talk about next here. Yes, the Mets lost 2 games to the Braves, but can we be a little more rational as Mets fans? Probably not. I'm going to talk about that more in just a minute. But did you know the key to sustainable weight loss is actually through your liver? The liver is the body's metabolic furnace. It's responsible for flushing out harmful toxins and igniting your fat-burning metabolism. But thanks to modern diets that are rich in unhealthy processed foods, most of us have overworked livers. Now it's easy, though, to rejuvenate your liver health and reignite your metabolism thanks to the Liver Health Formula by Pure Health Research. The Liver Health Formula contains 8 liver-boosting super nutrients like turmeric, beet, and artichoke extract, all of which work together to wake up a sluggish liver and turn it into a toxin-flushing and fat-burning machine. No more bloated belly, no more uncomfortable digestion, no more feeling tired and low on energy all the time, and best of all, the Liver Health Formula makes it easier to maintain a healthy body weight long term. As a listener of our show, you can try the Liver Health Formula risk-free today, and you'll get a free bottle of their Curb Fit with your order. Curb Fit is a safe, all-natural appetite suppressant, making it easy to say no to naughty foods. This makes it the perfect complement to the Liver Health Formula. If you want to try them today, go to getliverhelp.com/MLB to learn more. Again, that's getliverhelp.com/MLB to learn more. You can try the Liver Health Formula completely risk-free and claim your free bottle of the Curb Fit with your order. Looking at the Mets offense since they destroyed the Cincinnati Reds, you had the first game of their series against the Phillies. They lost 2-1. They then won a 1-0 game. Bats woke up against Zach Wheeler that put up 6 runs. Then you have the 13-1 performance on Monday, and they just got shut out on Tuesday, 5-0 in a game where the Mets recorded just 3 hits. They were struck out 14 times, 12 of them by Charlie Morton, who nearly goes 7, allowing just 3 hits and 1 walk. Francisco Lindor, the only guy you can say had a really good offensive game, going 2 for 4. And his last at bat hit the ball hard. Matt Olson made a diving stop at the line there to end the ball game. Lindor showed up. Nobody else really did up and down the lineup. Brandon Nemo got the other hit. Vogelbach drew a walk. Nemo drew a walk. I guess you could say Nemo had a decent game getting on base in 2 of his 4 plate appearances, but just a dreadful game offensively. And yes, you look at the end of this lineup, Devin Marrero and Michael Perez, not necessarily guys you were expecting. That's because Eduardo Escobar was scratched, because Tomas Nido hit the COVID-related IL, and I guess they didn't want to go with James McCann for the day. So that's where you're at here. I imagine James McCann starts the last couple games of this series. Don't know how much of a huge boost that is over a Michael Perez, but certainly a boost. And then obviously Brett Baty will give this lineup a lot more than Devin Marrero did. Here's what I'll say, though, when it comes to the concern about the offense. Let's remember that prior to this series, if you took the offense from the third game back from the break when Daniel Vogelbach was inserted into the lineup and you looked at it up until this series, the Mets had the best offense in baseball. If you look at including the 2 games where the Mets struggled offensively prior to Vogelbach's insertion into the lineup, right? And this is against the Padres, the first series back. You just talk about since the All-Star break, the Mets had the 4th best offense based on runs scored and the 2nd best offense based on WRC plus and F4. So let's look at the larger sample size and not focus on 2 games, particularly when the Braves got some good pitching in those 2 games. Their bullpen strong. Spencer Strider was pretty dynamic in his start. And Charlie Morton, as much as we want to talk about, it's Charlie Morton is not having a great year. The Mets should be able to handle him, which I said coming into the start, owning it for sure. I thought the Mets would fare much, much better against Charlie Morton than they did. When Morton's on, Morton's a good pitcher. It's not like he's suddenly a bad starter. When he has his days where the curveball looks good and he's sharp and he's hitting his spots, he's going to be difficult to face. And so, yeah, getting struck out, 12 times by Charlie Morton, not necessarily a great vote of confidence for this Mets offense. But I'm just not overreacting to 2-game sample sizes, particularly when you lose your starting pitcher in the second inning of both of those games. Taijuan Walker exits this game due to back spasms. Generally, that's an injury that I think you'll feel okay with because it shouldn't point towards, an IL stint necessarily. But back injuries also are concerning because they can arise again. So that's the issue there. I do think there is something to be said about the mental toll it takes on a team when you lose your starting pitcher in the second inning. We saw it when Carrasco came out, and you see it again. That's why I'm not taking too much stock in these games, because suddenly RJ Alvarez, who basically looked like a fatter version of Robert Gazelman, if we're being completely honest with ourselves. I was actually recording the Just Baseball show, and I'm looking up at the corner of my eye at the TV, and I'm like, wait a minute. Why is Taijuan Walker not on the mound right now? And why does it look like a tanner and bigger version of Robert Gazelman? That's not Trevor Williams, is it? And then I realized, wait a minute, that is this RJ Alvarez that the Mets just promoted today. And you know what? He gave up 3 runs, gave up 2 homers. Nogasek ends up giving up a couple as well. Not a well-pitched game by the Mets, but at the end of the day, they've gotten through these 2 starts when it was obviously Carrasco exiting and now Walker. And the bullpen, even though it's been taxed, Buck Showalter very much managed these games to keep his horses in that pen, the guys that he really wants to lean on, Adam Ottavino, Trevor May, Edwin Diaz. Obviously, he's kept them rested for these next 2 games. I think the Mets' plan here is to win the final 2 games of this series, and you come out of Atlanta without having lost any ground. Very possible when Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom are about to take the ball. But this rotation suddenly looks depleted. They were at a point where they were 6 strong in their rotation once deGrom came back, David Peterson ending up in Syracuse. Now, not only is Carrasco hurt, and we have more clarification on his timetable for return, but you have the back issues with Taijuan Walker that have arisen once again. That is something to think about. And could that change the course of direction with someone like Tylor Megill? I'm going to talk about that in just a minute because this is a very interesting thing to think about as the Mets have to get through the final stretch run of their season here. But if you're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks, a few could become a few too many. And as the evening comes to an end, people start to head out and you think of calling for a ride. But then again, you wonder, you know what? Nah, I live nearby. I can probably make it home okay. It's no big deal, right? What are the odds you'll get pulled over? And even so, what's the worst thing that could happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you kill someone. Oh, wait a minute. There's so many risks that come with drinking and driving. Everyone knows about these risks. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out there right now looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again. Play it safe, plan ahead, get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. All right, so here is the latest on the Mets starting pitching. Carlos Carrasco, a grade 1 strain of that oblique. That is actually good news, but he'll be out 3 to 4 weeks. What does that tell us? Well, you're not going to see him in August, and you might not see him until mid-September, but should be good to come back for the playoffs. That's big for the Mets. With that said, now David Peterson slots into the rotation. You got a doubleheader on Saturday, so if you can stay away from Trevor Williams, he likely makes a spot start. You roll from there. That's a big series against the Phillies, and you don't necessarily love the way the pitching lines up for you. Chris Bassett will be on the hill, I guess, on Friday night. Then you'll have that doubleheader, and then I believe you'll get Max Scherzer, if I'm not mistaken, on Sunday. I think that's how everything is supposed to shake out for this Mets team. Yeah. So if that's the case, the Mets will still have some good starters to go out there against the Phillies, but that's going to be a tough challenge for them. But after that, your schedule lightens up. You're going to play the Yankees following that series, and then you're playing a lot of sub 500 teams. And so, with that said, I think that the rotation is going to be okay. But if Taijuan Walker's back issues continue, well, now Trevor Williams is in the rotation. Do I think the Mets can get by with that? Yes, but he's been really key to their bullpen, and it just hurts you in so many different places. Tylor Megill has yet to begin his rehab assignment. Would they now consider scrapping their plan of just getting him ready as a bullpen arm and stretching him out to be part of the rotation? I think it depends on how Taijuan Walker, progresses over the next couple of days. Is his back just a one-night flare-up, or is it still hurting him over the subsequent days? And then depending on that, maybe that would influence your decision on Megill. You also have Joey Lucasia to think about. He is pitching, but he hasn't really gotten too stretched out just yet. So when could we possibly see him? That's debatable. Jose Budo is a spot start option. Here's a guy that just got promoted to AAA, has had some mixed success this year. I don't think the Mets would have really wanted him up, but he's on the 40. So that is an option that they have. Ultimately, I think that the depth the Mets have collected throughout the season is still, or throughout the offseason, is still enough to make it through the 162. I think David Peterson is going to end up in this rotation for the rest of the year. He's earned that. He's been good. I imagine he'll be good again. If David Peterson is making starts for you in October, I think that's fine as well. The one question I would have when it relates to Tylor Megill is, where is he more valuable to the Mets? Is he more valuable getting stretched out to be that next potential spot starter when you need one? That could be one game, that could be 2 games, that could be 3 or 4 games. Who really knows how many starts they would potentially need a guy like Megill to fill down the stretch here? Or is it more important to add him as an X factor to the bullpen? I still think for October's purposes, the better bet is to just focus on him as a reliever and to trust that you're going to get a healthy return from not only Walker being day-to-day here, but Carlos Carrasco. And again, that's me just on the surface of back spasms. We don't know if there's going to be any MRIs done or something else could happen. That could change everything. If Taijuan Walker's out, then Megill 100% gets stretched out as a starter, and Trevor Williams is your stopgap until he's ready. But if Walker can stay in the rotation, you're just trying to deal with this period to get to Carlos Carrasco coming back. I think David Peterson is a suitable fill-in. I think Williams can be stretched out or could have his role expanded a little bit as the swingman. And ultimately, I still believe that Megill's upside as a late inning reliever come playoff time is worth still putting your eggs into that basket. But another setback across any of these fronts could force the Mets into another direction. The bottom line, though, is you got to wonder, when is it going to end? Because these things tend to snowball. You have Guillorme goes down and then Escobar, and you had McNeil the other night as well. Luckily he's able to play through it, but there was an injury there. We don't know how that thumb is affecting him. You then have Carrasco go down and Walker, and it just can get to that point where you think, okay, when's it going to stop? Hopefully this is the last of it. If the Mets can remain healthy over the final stretch run of the season, I still believe that this is the team to beat in the NL East. But you also have to avoid the devastation of really letting the Braves get you. They've done what they were supposed to do here. They won the 2 games not started by Scherzer and DeGrom. Now the Mets have to do what they're supposed to do, which is win these last 2 games, keep it at a split, keep the Braves where they were at the start of this series, which was 5.5 back, and then move on, head out to Philly, and try to do bare minimum the same thing against them, if not better, and try to maintain this lead in the National League East. That's going to be all, though, for today's edition of Locked On Mets. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB, hosted by Paul Francis Sullivan. Locked On MLB is where you want to go to stay up to date with everything going on in Major League Baseball. You can follow Locked On MLB wherever you get podcasts.